There's nothing to writing. All you do is sit down at a typewriter and bleed. Welcome to The Bleeders, a podcast and support group about book writing and publishing. I'm writer and podcaster Courtney Kosak, and each episode I bring you new conversations with authors, agents, and publishers about how to write and sell books. On this very special episode of The Bleeders, I am chatting with author and academic Antonia Crane, someone I have known for years and deeply admire both on and off the page. Antonia is a previous guest of the pod. She wrote the brilliant memoir Spent, which is one of my all-time faves, and she generously offered to switch things up and interview me about my debut memoir, Girl Gone Wild, which is out now. Woo! We get into what it actually takes to write a book, in my case, over 15 years, and how to keep working toward the goal even when you're not sure it's ever going to find a home. We also talk about structure, emotional truth versus factual truth, and why writing memoir is basically impossible, and why we do it anyway, and so much more. This episode is such a goodie, so let's get into it with Antonia Crane.
Hi, my name is Antonia Crane, and I'm the author of Spent.
Hey, Courtney.
Hey, Antonia.
I'm really happy to do this with you today.
I am so honored. Your book is one of my all-time faves, so this is so beautiful that we're doing this.
It is really beautiful. I've known you for a really long time. So we took some magazine writing classes together, at least one.
Yeah.
And then I've been on one of your sets for a different project that you did a while ago. And it was right when you, I think, maybe first met your husband. So this was like a long time ago.
And then we podcasted, and you did you were my interviewee for the KCRW story. We have a long history.
Yeah, I was. Yeah. And then you wanted to do another story, and I said, we could do that story, but I have a better one. We're organizing strippers again.
Yes.
And then that ended up being a whole multi-series event and story that was one of my favorites of all time. And I'm a huge fan of your podcasts.
Thank you.
Private Parts Unknown and this one. I binged them on the way to teach at USC.
That's so sweet.
It's incredible. So I really want to talk about Girl Gone Wild. And I read it, and I love your voice. But first, let's talk about kind of the making of it, right? So tell me a little bit about your process working with the prolific Chloe Caldwell. Because what I understand is that, because I've been spying on you, so I've been rereading, or not to me it's rereading, but listening to your previous podcast of Bleeders, and within it you drop little hints of your process, and so I've been like taking little notes, and I'm like, oh, she worked with Chloe Caldwell and twice, and so tell us a little bit about the making of Girl Gone Wild in its inception.
Yeah, so the first essay that I published of my adulthood when I was transitioning from actor to writer was in March 2011. And I think right around that time, shortly after, is when I met you in those magazine classes with Taffy.
Taffy, right.
And that first essay was just me trying to cope in the aftermath of this brutal breakup. What's so funny is that a little piece of that made it into the book. So really, this book is like 15 years in the making. And I didn't know exactly what I was doing at the beginning. I thought down the road, like, I want to write a book, but I didn't know how to do that. And I didn't know exactly what it would be about. So I did think I was writing some sort of book, like in those 2012, I wrote my first essay on Girls Gone Wild, that experience. And it is definitely like, you can see little pieces of it that exist in the later version, just like, oh, that mirrors that, or here's the fully formed idea of that. But I didn't know that would be the title essay. I didn't even know that would be part of the book. And I just kept writing these one-off essays as I was getting things out of my system and working through things. And really, I was working through a lot of shame, I think, personally. And then, oh my God, I fell in love with Cheryl Strayed. I read Wild. I read Tiny Beautiful Things. She gave me this vision of like who I wanted to be someday, my own version of that. And through her, I found Chloe. I took a couple shorter classes with her. And then in 2020, she was doing this year-long incubator through Catapult. And I was like, so poor. I was so poor, but I was like, I got a partial scholarship, and I was like, it's okay. I'm going to pay this money and hopefully something will happen. And that was really taught me how to get started and like just conceptualize like writing enough words to write a book. And I wrote a full draft in there, but it also had some things that I later pulled out, some things that were just very like eating disorder focused, which is I'm writing about for my next memoir. And I just realized like it's too much and it's not enough. So that first version was just me like wrapping my head around what this book could be, but it had the Girl Gone Wild title then in 2020. And that essay was starting to take shape. And there are definitely some essays that exist in the book were in that draft. And then I put it in a drawer and I was sort of like, fuck, I thought I was going to be done after that, but I know it's not done. So I got an agent. I tried to sell another book. It didn't go anywhere. We weren't a fit. And I was really frustrated. And then I saw Chloe was teaching another, like in 2023, another year-long incubator. And I had been self-flagellating for years and like, why am I not finishing this book? So I was like, okay, she helped me so much the first time. Just having a container to like do, and I know you know this from your MFA and stuff, just like having someone else expecting pages from you sometimes really helps.
It's such a gift.
Yeah. So that's what she gave me the second time. And the second time I had my game face on. I was like, okay, I have an idea of how this process goes. So now I'm really going to take advantage of it this second time. And also 2020 was such a shit show with the pandemic. So in 2023, I went in and I was really like had a lot more of an idea of what I wanted to do. That draft that I finished in that class is really like the bones of the book. The epilogue is the same. I wound up writing a different prologue after that and then swapping that out. So things changed. I ripped an essay out. I combined some things, but that really was the bones of the book. And then after that, I had wrapped my head around the process enough that I could get a developmental editor and like figure out how to proceed from there. And then actually, that's not that many years ago. So I've sort of been in this final stage for the last couple of years.
I'm so glad that you talked about how it's such a marathon and not a sprint.
Yeah.
And how it's such an incubator of time that passes between the beginning thought of the story and what I think of as a coming to your womanhood, coming to feminism story, and also our teachers along the way. I have also been swimming in the Cheryl Strayed soup of memoir for so long. And she has really made me the writer that I am today in a lot of ways. And Lydia Yuknovich.
Yep, she's another one.
We have these touchstones of women that provide this space for us, which I think is so relevant to the themes of your book. So I want to get into it a little bit. Now, you're a kid from Minnesota, and there's a lot going on in Minnesota right now.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a really good time to reflect on that space and time. And although you didn't touch on now because it's impossible, I feel like it'll be a really good opportunity to kind of bring your community to the story, to your story. And one thing that really touched me, we're from like, I think slightly different generations. You're a millennial, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm Gen X. So I loved this millennial story. And the other millennial memoir I've read recently is Julia Fox's memoir.
Oh, I haven't read it.
And I was thinking about that book and your book and how it seemed like you were a theater kid and the pain of being a theater kid in a place like Minnesota and just needing to have attention and needing to perform. And like, it's a very spirited book. It's a very playful book. It's the writing fucking blasts. Like it just blasts, it's really propulsive. It's fun. It's alive. It's spirited. But there are moments of sadness. So of course I locked on to those moments of sadness. So the first initial sadness that I felt was being a theater kid in the place where you grew up. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I never totally felt like Jackson was home or like I was born into the right place. It's horrible to even think like that I wasn't born into the right family because I love them so much and like wouldn't want it any other way now. But, at that point, I just felt like I have these big dreams. I've always had these big dreams. I'm in this place where people are, salt of the earth and that has its own beauty, but like there's not a ton going on. And it felt a little restrictive. And I mean, my whole childhood was just like, okay, how am I gonna get out of here? And then my real life is gonna start on the other side of this.
Yeah, I felt that. And we have that in common. Sorry, my kitten wants to really be a part of this interview. I wrote down while I was, reading the first half of your book, agency and bravado, and how, like, within the agency and bravado, there was also this profound sadness lurking. And I really loved that. And one of the places also where I went from bravado and agency and the young you kind of having these adventures and these like pushing yourself. And, there's also a sadness to that. There's a sadness to like being young and like feeling pressure to grow up in a hurry.
Mhm.
But then on page 51, you write, "It took me less than 6 months to throw away my big dreams for a dude." Can you tell us a little bit about your process of that? I think that is a segue and a turning point in the book early on.
Yeah, it's so funny that my first relationship was so terrible because I thought I was so strong already at that point and like would never fall into an abusive dynamic and I couldn't even imagine that for myself. But then, the first person who came along that I really attached myself to, that's exactly what happened. And I even at the time I think was a little surprised by that, or part of me was, but I became consumed in this relationship. And yeah, I mean, it's a whole story that, started when I was 18 and like that relationship wound up coming back around 5 years later. And
Derek, right?
Derek, yeah. And oh, God,
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say about that. It is so tragic.
Well, but it's also just kind of the steps that we take
Yeah.
in your coming of age, coming to yourself story, and it's a huge and important part. Also, do you have your book in front of you by any chance? Yay! Would you mind reading for us on the bottom of 95 into 96, because of where we are right now with the Epstein files and victims and feminism in your book, and how you really talk so poignantly about what this culture tells victims about being silent. And don't worry, I have like more funnier parts to think about as well. But I just think it's so important in this moment to kind of share what your thinking was about the
Yeah.
Kavanaugh and that part. Would you mind reading
You
it?
want me the Weinstein story broke?
Yeah, it's the bottom of 95.
Oh, I should set this up. Right before this, I'm talking about I'd been raped basically and then felt like I don't know, still it was hard to my victimhood like I didn't know how to deal with the aftermath. So anyway, that is what comes right before this. The Weinstein story broke in 2017, more than 13 years later, and opened the Me Too floodgates. Watching Christine Blasey Ford testify against Brett Kavanaugh in 2018 had me shaking and livid for weeks. For a few triggering years, it became impossible not to think about how I had been raped. I thought about how weird it was that I went to the doctor for a tetanus shot that same summer after a nail barely grazed my butt, but I couldn't fathom going after the tampon incident. I thought about how our culture incentivizes victims to stay silent. I thought about how victims have to be perfect to be deemed valid. What I thought about the most was how routine this type of predation is. Guys like Latham are everywhere.
Thank you. Thank you for writing that. I think it's really important right now, these moments that we have of discovery and self-revelation. And it really like connects us to the women around us and the women that are courageously coming forward right now and calling truth to power. And I think that your book is a really important part of that story.
Thank you. Yeah. Isn't it so bizarre? The Epstein stuff started coming out, and I was like, God, we're just trapped in this cycle. But what's interesting, it's hard to put empowerment back in a box. You know, once we've come into our own, it's really hard to shove us back down. And so there's something to that, right?
Yeah. You can't shove us back down. And I really felt that. And that's part of the irresistible quality of your book as well. It's not just her resilience, her being you in the book, but it's like your constant reflection on kind of what the male gaze felt like. And you say the male gaze was like cupping your ass, like a hand cupping your ass at all times. I loved that. And some of your descriptions are not only funny, but incredibly sad. It's the funny sad, which I love. It's two great tastes that taste great together, you know? You have certain descriptions that just have this incredible wit about it, like the part of your life where you're struggling with your addictions, your various addictions. I don't want to give it all away, but you definitely juggle addictions.
Say whatever. There's a lot of juicy stuff.
Right. There's a lot of juicy stuff. And I really relate to the juggling of addictions. And being hungover and doing the beauty pageant and how funny that was, and the princess of Adderall or the queen of Adderall. But also just your descriptions are so incredible, like running on candy necklace dust and Vicks Vapor Rub. How beautiful that was. And it really, to me, it's just such a full and colorfully lived life.
Oh, thank you.
And it is like it's a feminist manifesto, and it is about coming of womanhood. And, you know, I wrote in huge letters, agency and bravado and happy sad. And I really loved it. I mean, I could talk to you for 4 hours, but I also like want to get to my questions.
I just want to say it is such an honor. I feel like our books are in conversation, and
I feel that.
What I love about your book is what you're telling me you love about mine too. And so,
oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, it's just such an honor to be seen by you.
I love it, and I'm I'm gonna dive in deeper, and I hope this is one of many conversations, because your book goes to a lot of places, and I feel like we could have like 1 hour long conversation just about OnlyFans, sex work, and Girls Gone Wild, and what that whole franchise means. I feel like that's an hour conversation right there. And
it is. I also just think I'm dying to just blurt this out because I've been thinking about you. I think I would have continued down sex work if I were queer. Does this make sense to you?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Because I think when I see women like you that have gone further and still kept their sense of self and been really empowered in it, I think that's part of it. Because for me, I was scared. I was like, am I going to hate every man? Or like, am I, like that's who I want to fuck too? Or like, I don't know. It was like, that was a source of confusion for me. I wonder if that makes any sense to you.
Well, it totally makes sense. And again, like this is such a longer conversation I really am dying to have. But no, I do feel it's twofold, right, for me, because I feel that, and I know that philosophically and ideologically, sex work is intrinsically queer because of the intervention that it does in heterosexual behavior and norms. Just like transness is like personifying inappropriate gender behavior. Well, sex work is also modeling inappropriate gender roles by intervening in patriarchal norms where men want access to our bodies and they want to control our bodies. And so choosing to have agency over how that is marshaled is intrinsically queer. Also, I dated women for like at least 7 or 8 years when I was deeply in sex work, and sex work ruined me for it and made me bi and pan. Because
interesting.
Yes, I wanted to tell you that. And I realized like, oh, fuck, I'm turned on by men. Shit. I'm bisexual.
Oh my God, it's so multi-layered.
And then I was with a guy for like off and on for 6 years. And now I'm, my husband's trans, and I'm a huge part of the LGBTQ community, and I'm in the trans community now. And I mean, It's just part of my queerness. But sex work is definitely, I think it's intrinsically queer. And I know what you're saying. And being two girls from small towns, like never underestimate the fury of a small town girl. Like we go hard, right? We go hard.
We do.
So I do want to know, like, okay, let's just do these, let's get through some questions just to kind of lay the groundwork. Let's start easy and go hard and go deep. So where are you living right now and writing these days?
I'm in Austin right now. My husband is doing business. He's opening a restaurant here. And so I've been based here, but like I'm going back to LA next week. I go back to LA whenever I can because that place just lives in my heart so hardcore. But yeah, I'm in my podcasting walk-in closet, and I'm trying to embrace every anxiety-ridden moment of this book launch, but I cannot wait to crawl back into my writing cave and just be working on my next book when this is done.
Fantastic. And when did you first begin identifying as a writer?
God, I ask everyone this and I don't even know. Not until I was probably 27, 28. And I conceived of myself as an actor for my whole life. And it felt like wrong to want to be something else. But there are early like signs. I'd always been a really good writer in school. I won this essay contest at the local library. I was always reading a ton of books every summer for their challenge. I would try to read through, like, I was competitive about it to a point where it was weird. And I was like reading children's books to try to like hit my quota. Anyway. And then I always had this habit of like writing down big words that I wanted to know and ideas for things. It was like unclear how I would ever use this content. So I guess what I'm saying is it's sort of been there all along, but I didn't really know that until my late 20s.
Amazing. What is your dream writing routine?
My dream writing routine is so simple. I don't have any other obligations. My podcasts are batched and edited, and I'm just like in my sweatpants on my bed. I write best on my bed with my two dogs next to me and my husband bringing me kale bakes and like a little food, and then going on walks. I love doing a sprint, taking a walk. Even if you're listening to a podcast, it'll knock something loose. And then when you get back, you can write the next sprint. That's perfection.
Beautiful. What is your actual writing routine?
I live that, actually. It took me a long time to get there, but in my current life, I live that. I mean, things like this, things like book launch take me out of it, but that's part of that's a necessary part of the process. But other than that, for the last like year and a half, I've kind of been living it, which is amazing.
Beautiful. You're such a star. What is one piece of writing that makes you jealous you didn't write it?
Oh, fuck. I'll say your book.
Whoa.
I fucking love Spent.
Thank you. That's so kind of you.
I love Spent. I feel like that's in the family of these like amazing female memoirs that we've been talking about, like The Wild, like The Chronology of Water, The Spent. I love reading a badass woman tell me how she got there.
I love it too.
How she came into her own.
Yeah, incredible. What is one favorite piece of writing or chapter you are jealous of yourself for writing?
Oh, fuck. I'm really proud. I've been recording the audiobook over the last few weeks, which is Heaven and Hell. And I have really, sometimes I'm like, good for you.
You should, because it's amazing.
I really love Dear Dan, I think is one of my favorite that's not his real name, but that was a previous iteration. Dear Derek is the actual essay. And I love that. I love any formal deviations.
Is it an epistolary letter?
Yeah.
Okay. That's my favorite. I love epistolary styles.
And it just came out of like, I kind of couldn't write about abortion normally until I got it out of me like that. That sort of like it's sort of like a chant. And so I love that letter.
I love it. What is your relationship to perfectionism?
Oh my God. The bane of my existence. The older I get, the more that I realize like I have to operate as this imperfect being who just like always wants to be perfect, and I will never get there. And it's okay to have really high standards, but like you can't let your standards hold you back. So even, have I found 10 typos or incorrections working on the audiobook? Yes, I have. Am I going to get my editor to change them? I'm going to do my damnedest. But part of me is like, oh, it hurts me so much to see a mistake or an extra comma or a double space, or I misquoted Kris Jenner by one word. Like that pains me. And also, I don't wish this process were delayed by even a month. So, you have to sort of make peace with it, even though it's so hard.
But you also juggle like 75 podcasts.
I do that.
So do you edit them all yourself?
I do the cut downs all myself. I'm sort of a control freak about that, but I do have a long relationship with Mike Castaneda, who mixes and masters. So I don't have to do the nitty gritty of balancing everything out. But I do all the content editing. And what I've learned about how to do what looks like I'm doing a lot of things at one time is to actually do one thing at a time. And so
that's good advice.
Yeah, if I'm trying to, like, I'll try to batch interviews. It's not always perfect. Sometimes I have to break my own schedule, but like, I'll try to do 2 weeks of podcast interviews, and all I'm doing is as much as possible podcast interviews. And then I'll try to edit a bunch of stuff at one time. And then I'll try to, okay, now because I did that, now I have 3 weeks I can just write on my book or whatever. And the more that I can do that, the better.
You wear a lot of hats. You really do. Okay, who are your darkest teachers?
Oh, say more.
I mean, it's kind of an open-ended question, however you interpret that.
Okay, that's a good interviewing technique. When I interviewed at the University of Michigan for their research studies, that's how you were supposed to you were not supposed to lead people. You were supposed to be like, whatever it means to you. I guess my darkest teachers are who I'm calling Derek, and who I'm calling Latham, and even Joe Francis. I don't know who I would be if I didn't do the Girls Gone Wild tour. I don't know who I would be if I didn't get an abortion when I was 23. I'm glad that I didn't live my original dream to be an actor. I think I'm living a richer life because I had to go through the obstacle course and I had to learn these lessons. And though, I wouldn't want my daughter to go through them, but I'm myself because of that. And I love myself. So I don't know. I guess those guys. Hate to give them any credit.
It makes sense though. Who is your most gentle, light-bearing teacher?
I'm just going to say, I cannot give enough props to Cheryl because I was in a really dark place, lost place when I first found Tiny Beautiful Things and Wild. And for someone who I've never met to be able to have such a...
We're talking about Cheryl Strayed for people who don't know.
Yes. To have such like an imprint on me, like from afar, just through her words. Epic. And I'm like, you're saying the same thing. Like, I'm sure she's ushered in a whole generation of women writers. And like, that is incredible. I hope to have like a tiny fraction of that impact.
That's beautiful. I feel the exact same way. So in one of your gazillion podcasts, you spoke about the emotional aspect of writing your memoir and in particular, fact-checking it. What specifically was hard about fact-checking Girl Gone Wild? Has it been cathartic?
Yeah. So back in like 2012, 2013, 2014. I was dating this comedian who I really admired. And I remember talking to him about like, it was hard for me to wrap my head around how I was going to be this memoir writer that I wanted to be because I didn't remember my life. But what I've been thinking about recently, as I've been thinking about that conversation, is like, I remember everything. And I think actually my problem was I didn't want to remember some things. I was trying not to remember some things. And in the process of writing this book, I really had to like sit down and go back to the place. And so I guess most of my most important work on that didn't involve journals or, going through. I'm a pack rat, so I have all kinds of archival documentation, but my most important work didn't involve any of that. It involved me just like going to like the dark corner of my mind and being like, okay, so what really happened that time that you don't want to think about? And then, asking my mom questions about how she remembers certain things was part of the process. Going down to my little basement office and going through my little papers and being like, oh, this happened then. Oh, that's really interesting. And then putting it together kind of like a scavenger hunt. That was part of the process too. I did keep a journal for a lot of my late 20s and early 30s. And I'm shocked by the fact that I always thought that's going to be the most important thing for my book is I'm going to go back to these journals, barely cracked them open because it just wasn't relevant after a certain point. It was like Bassie Ickby talks about this too, but like the emotional truth of your story is I did my best to like find dates and uncover details that eventually I had to blur or, things like that. But like really the story is your emotional truth. And like if it happened a week later, then it doesn't ultimately matter. So yeah, I discovered like actually I held a lot of those facts within myself.
Yeah. And it's also like, I always tell people when I teach memoir that writing a memoir is actually impossible because our memories will fail us and our memories are not video cameras.
Yes.
And also, we like to see ourselves in a certain way. And the way that we see things is through a filter. There's nothing neutral about it. And so it's actually impossible to write a memoir. And it's funny, like in Europe, they call Spent a novel. They just don't have these genre thing. They're not preoccupied with what is the exact truth.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting how, I think it's our reality TV obsession that I think toxic obsession with calling people to the truth of their own lives when it's actually impossible to see your own life in a way that is in perfect story form or something.
Even journalism comes with bias and like objectivity. What is that even?
What is that? Yeah, which I was going to ask this later, but I'm just going to ask it now. Which brings me, since we're talking kind of about structure and memoir, I wanted to ask you about the structure in Girls Gone Wild because I was really interested in the tone and the POV and how in the beginning, maybe first 100 pages, it kind of reads more chronologically and then it sort of spreads out and becomes a little more fragmented. And I was wondering if you can talk to us about that a little bit, the structure, and if you see it as more commercial or if you made a decision to kind of open it up in the latter half of it, where you get a little more flashy and fragmented. I'm not sure how to talk about it. You tell us how you'd like us to see it.
Oh, that's really interesting. It's interesting to hear other people's ideas. Like in the review that I got, they said it's semi-chronological, which I guess is true. I think what happens in the end, because the end is mostly chronological in terms of the essays, but I think what happens by that point is that within some of those stories, I'm remembering things in the past is probably what is happening a little bit more, whereas there's not as much to remember when I'm super young. I love the structure. I think if this was a big 5 book, somebody would have talked me out of this or tried to talk me out of this structure, but I was really hell-bent on doing it this way because I think it's true to how I felt these experiences and like it's episodic in a way,
Yeah,
but it's
exactly.
all interconnected. And what I love as a reader, like propulsive is like when you sent me in the email, you were like, you said fun and propulsive. And that's like the best compliment to me because that's what I fucking love as a reader. Like I want to snack my way through and to the point where I'm like hungry to keep going. And so I thought of a lot of these essays like crepes. And so, yeah, I really love the construction and the theater, like framing felt really right to me. And a few people tried to nudge me sort of out of the structure. And I am so glad I stuck to my guns.
I'm glad you stuck to your guns. People tried to nudge me out of my structure of Spent as well. They wanted it to go just from the very beginning and start as a young person and then graduate.
Mm-hmm.
But I liked the structure of starting in the present
Mm-hmm.
and then flipping back and then going and then ending in the present. And it's sort of like what I was capable of that moment and what I felt like was more, I guess, exciting to me to read. And I read Patrick O'Neill's Gun, Needle, Spoon, which
Oh,
begins with the cops breaking in to him. It's a story about being a junkie in San Francisco and robbing banks and going to therapy and talking about his bulimia.
oh,
It's a really great book. It's a great memoir, but it also begins in the beginning. And I'm like, I really love how that feels. And so I
uh-huh.
feel like what you're talking about is like, don't people please your way out of your own gut structure. Like, this is your gut structure. And I'm so glad you stuck with it.
Totally. I think I was just going to say that. Like it exists in your bones a little bit. Like you know how to tell this or like it will reveal itself to you as you start writing it
Mm-hmm.
and it should feel right to you. Like it should feel like it's snapping into place for you. And it gave me anxiety. The thought of writing it in another way made me like kind of physically ill. And that's how
Yeah.
you know you shouldn't do it.
Yeah. Okay. Who is not included in Girl Gone Wild and why?
People are surprised to learn I have 3 younger brothers. They're mentioned, but they're not really part of the plot.
Mhm.
And they were, of course, a big part of my childhood, especially, and they're still a part of my life. But I don't think they were necessary to tell this story. And there's a lot of characters. So they were like begging me to trim people at the end.
Yeah.
And so someone has asked me about them. I ripped out all the eating disorder stuff, or not all of it. There's still some remnants, but I avoided going really deep into that. And so there are, of course, stories and situations that involve characters that are more relevant to those stories that got ripped out. Yeah, it's so interesting how a memoir is to tell the most complete story requires a certain amount of omission. It's like
Yes.
an odd oxymoron juxtaposition kind of thing.
No, that's really, really important to think about. So, what is Girl Gone Wild pushing up against culturally?
Oh my God. Well, we've sort of touched on this,
We
but
have.
the fucking patriarchy. I love the epigraph that's Mary Daly. Almost everything has been stolen from us by the patriarchy. Our creativity has been stolen, our creative energies, our religion. I want it back. Like that to me was like, that is what I am in conversation with. That's what I'm trying to reclaim in this book is like all that bullshit that the patriarchy is trying to take away from us.
Beautiful. What does Girl Gone Wild say about agency or being what you call a dreamer?
Oh my God. Well, dreaming is not without risk. Chasing your dreams is not without risk. And agency is something that I had to really like carve out for myself. It's like no one's going to give that to you. That's something you snatch back. Probably after you've been through some shit. But, I don't regret chasing my dreams that helped me discover a whole nother dream and, has led me to this life that I wouldn't want to be more perfect than it is.
Do you think in some ways being what you call a dreamer is adverse or kicks up against feminism?
Ooh, say more.
I just feel like your book in a lot of ways is a feminist text, specifically millennial feminist text. And being a dreamer was sort of like part of growing up is our innocence is beat out of us and we're grown to find us. So the dreamer kind of dies. But I also feel like it's reborn over and over and over again, kind of like being married to someone. Like you're constantly kind of falling in love every day. You fall in love with that person every day. And it's kind of like with your dreams, they have to die. And then, or they get ground to a fine dust by Los Angeles, for instance. And then like they rise again. And then, our feminist sensibilities are like, well, feminism says I have to do everything, but I can't. And then it's just sort of like always kind of this, I think of it as like there's a tension there to me. And with your book as well, I think.
That's so interesting. I love that way of describing it. To me, I feel like they're kind of parallel. Like you're not going to be encouraged to chase your dreams. Like that is something you have to keep returning to, your passion, and like staying in touch with. And you can't beat it out of me at this point, but like I'm gonna keep coming back. And I feel like it's the same way with my feminism too. It's like society's not trying to like give me anything in that realm, but I'm taking it. It's sort of, but I love it is constantly being beat out of us in both realms. And they're on parallel tracks for me. And I'm like, I'm going full steam ahead.
Yeah. And we rebuild it. Like we
Yes.
rebuild it post Me Too. We rebuild it post Trump.
Yes.
And with our work. And that's why I think that books like yours are so important to put in what I call the cultural can of the moment of what people of your generation are grappling with. And also just, I think that your book, it's an argument against despair. And I have found with a lot of my millennial homies that I've encountered a lot of collective despair of your generation. And yours is not that. Like, I feel like Girl Gone Wild refuses despair.
Yes.
And it keeps that feisty, spirited optimism to the very last minute. Okay. Okay, so I know this is going long and I'm sorry, but I have to keep it going for a little while longer because we need to segue to our lightning round quick fire on publishing. Okay, so here we go with some quick fire publishing questions. So when did you feel like Girl Gone Wild was ready to pitch and what was that process like?
In retrospect, I probably started too soon, but actually it was right on time. But like 2023 is really when I was starting to like enter contests. I had heard of people like Lily Danziger had won a contest. And yeah, the end of 2023, the beginning of 2024 is when I really started pursuing that stuff. And then I was doing that on the side because I had this fancy agent that ultimately was like not the right fit for me. And I'm so glad that I entered those contests because I made the long list for Santa Fe Writers Project. I was a finalist for Trio House Press, another one I had placed in or whatever. And those were giving me positive signals that like I'm close. I also knew that I needed another like big revision. And I got a really nice rejection from Chris at Trio House Press. And it hurt me because like I wanted it so bad that I couldn't reply in the moment. I was honored that she saw it. She knew, but it needed a little more work than she had the bandwidth for at the time. And I ran into her at AWP last year. I was feeling really antisocial and I was in the middle of a revision and I was feeling a little bit demoralized about just that I hadn't been able to find a publisher yet. And at AWP, I didn't want to talk to a lot of people, but I was like, I got to find Chris and I got to say thank you for sending me that rejection because it's been enough time. I've processed it and that was actually really nice that she sent me that. And so I went through the maze of the booksellers or whatever, and I got to the Trio House table, and I was like, "Are you Chris?" And she was like, "Oh, Courtney, oh my God." We had this amazing chat for just like 5 minutes. I would be shocked if it were 10. Like we just chatted for a little bit. And I got a email from her like 2 weeks later, and she was like, "I can't stop thinking about your book. Can I buy it?" So all that to say, if I wouldn't have been rejected from that first contest, I wouldn't have my book deal right now. So it actually happened right on time.
Were these contests where you submitted your full manuscript?
Yeah. And, people kind of push back because like there was a little entry fee, but I got to be honest, best $25 or whatever I ever spent. So
Fantastic. Did you have a query letter, and how many did you send out when you were sending it out?
Well, I was sort of querying this other related project that's narrative nonfiction when I was reaching out to agents. And I would maybe like slip in that I had this other manuscript that had placed in contests. But, we always get the message that like memoir's so hard to sell and blah, blah, blah. So I was trying to focus on this other project. And actually, the agent that I got didn't want to represent my memoir anyway. He thinks only celebrity memoirs sell. He's probably right. But so anyway, yeah, I did write a query, but that's not how I got my agent. I met my agent at a workshop, and that really didn't have anything to do with these contests. I did submit it in tandem with the manuscript, but for me, the query letter has not been an important part of the journey.
So walk us through that a little bit, because I thought that you met your editor on a webinar, and now you're saying you also met your agent at a webinar?
I met my agent at a webinar, like workshop type thing. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
But not my editor.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about that process?
The agent process?
Yeah.
I believe it was through Roadmap Writers. I love Roadmap, like for screenwriting. I think they're great. Joey Tuccio is like the co-founder, and they do really, so much of that stuff can be a little predatory, and the way that they run it is not at all. They like genuinely introduce you to people in the industry. And so the agent that I got was doing webinars or whatever through them. And so I had a chance to like pitch my thing, and he was interested, and I sent other projects that I was working on. And we did go out, and that project died on submission. One person took it to their acquisitions board. I think that book is ultimately, I'm going to sell it to a university press or potentially even Trio House Press, but I will write that book someday. And then, yeah, meeting my editor/publisher was through the contest.
Okay, that was through the contest. Yeah, so that was Trio House.
Yes.
So they both were from Trio House.
And my editor and my publisher are kind of the same person.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay. I don't really, it's hard to follow all of the crumbs that happen along the way for a book to be born. It's so complicated.
Totally. I don't know how small your press was, but Trio House is so small that some people are wearing multiple hats.
I see. I totally get it. No, I went with a local publisher, Rare Bird Books, and they had in-house editors. And then my French publisher is also my translator with like 2 other people. So yeah, it's a very, very, very small. Mm-hmm. So I totally get that. How did you negotiate the deal with your publisher, or did your agent do it for you, or what was that process like?
So by that point, my agent and I had parted ways, and I was in the perfect position to negotiate the contract because I just had gone to AWP, and people at AWP were saying the Authors Guild will look at your contract and they won't redline it, but they'll send you notes back. And one side effect of doing so much freelance writing and working in the entertainment industry so long is like I've become a contract shark. And I had just negotiated with Canada Land for this podcast episode I was making. And so I sort of was like in the headspace of knowing what I wanted and what to look out for. And I feel like we landed in a good place for both of us. And I will say, yeah, definitely the Authors Guild contract review that they do for their members is totally worth it. I definitely recommend that to people. And I also just recommend, I got some things in my contract that I probably wouldn't have got or probably wouldn't have even known to ask for if I had not been working on building my platform this whole time. And the stuff like I was concerned about TV and film rights because I already wrote a pilot that's related to this project. And I was concerned about audio rights because I make podcasts and I knew that I wanted to produce my own audiobook. And I don't think it's smart for all writers to hold those rights because you should only hold the rights if you think you're the best person to exploit them. And that's not the case for everyone. So, all this to say, building your platform, building your network, those are hugely valuable things. And that gives you more leverage when it's time to negotiate it with a contract. She probably would have laughed at me if I would have asked for certain things if I hadn't had a track record of working in that field or whatever.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, when you spin a million plates like Courtney Kozak, like you have so many, you're so knowledgeable about these various tendrils that are in contract negotiations. It's really, really smart that you know all of these things, but a lot of writers don't. And I think there's a lot of predatory thievery going on and yeah, just a lot of shenanigans to look out for. And then also, I think that's really smart to not be covetous of every single thing because maybe you're not the best person to write the screenplay to your memoir. Maybe you just leave that open because great things could happen that we can't anticipate. That's really good advice.
Yeah, totally. And also, just to add on to that, when you're doing freelance placing pieces, if you're like serious about writing a book, you need to seriously read your contracts and you need to not sell your rights to your best stories because you're going to want that later and it's going to create this issue for you. And like the New York Times negotiated with me. Almost everyone will negotiate with me. I recently had to walk away from a piece at Newsweek because they were trying to take all these rights for like $300. I was like, you're crazy.
Yeah. No. Fuck that. Yeah, that's really smart. I hope you do like a webinar about this at some point and just do like a 20-minute. Idea. You should do a webinar about this because we don't know. Like narratively, not to badmouth narratively, but they were really weird too. They had this like relationship with Disney at the time and it was
IP, yeah.
It was creepy. Yeah. Okay. So on the topic of platform, you're a marketing queen. I have noticed your little videos. What has that been like for you about marketing your own book? And what are we to expect on that level of you marketing your own book? And what advice do you have?
Oh my God. I am going to know a lot more in like 6 months because I don't know what worked yet. But I'm like, I don't want to have any regrets about not trying stuff. And I hired PR. I hired Kathleen Schmidt. She writes the Publishing Confidential on Substack. She's wonderful. Her Substack is what attracted me to her. I got some quotes for like $30,000 for book PR. And I was like, you could buy a car for that. And she did not charge me that much money, a much more fair amount of money. And I really appreciate her. But the thing is, your publicist can't do everything for you. And so you really like need to be a good partner to them. And still there's going to be stuff that you just need to take the lead on it or like it's not going to get done. And so I'm still pitching all my contacts or like working my personal contacts as best I can. That's happening like in the background invisibly to a lot of people. I decided to make these videos because I was like, I can't control so much of this process. I can't control who replies to my emails. I can't control anything in the PR realm. I can make requests, but I can't control it. And one thing I can do is make a video every day. And I don't have like the hugest network, but I do have a lovely network of people, and some of them are very down to support me. And if I'm in their ear every day or like on their screen doing my little thing, like it's going to remind them by the end to pre-order my book. And so, it's a lot of time and energy. And is it worth it like in a financial way? No, but like your debut numbers are important. And so the more that I can do to like boost my pre-order numbers, I'm down to do. So I did that. I'm doing things like This Is So Lovely. And I think I'm totally gonna credit you, but I think I am gonna reach out to people I've interviewed and do a special mashup episode of them asking me questions too.
You should.
Everyone, that was Antonia's idea. She sent me
Ideas are free. It's about following through with the idea.
It was a really good one. It was so sweet to receive. But
Good.
like,
yeah, you can use the audio of just like, I'm so proud of you. We've known each other for so long. This is
was
so
the best.
amazing.
I know I need to
I'm
say
so
that.
happy. I bought an advance copy.
Amazing. Yeah, do everything.
Do everything. Okay, that's good advice.
Today, wait, one more thing.
Yeah, no, do it.
Today, so I'm a teacher. You're a teacher too. So great thing to think about for your next book launch. It would probably be weird if you weren't already a teacher. You wouldn't be able to tap into this part of it. But I teach for writing workshops. I had 4 classes that were going to be in February and March. I was like, I'm going to give my students, like, I'm going to make it an incentive that if you sign up for that class, I will give you a signed copy of my book. And so I'm doing that part of my pre-order campaign. That's probably, so far I have 28 orders for that. It's probably going to be at least double when it's all said and done. So that's like how you can get probably 60, 70 orders. And then I launched today something called the Confessional, and the doors will probably be closed by the time this episode comes out. But basically, I'm doing a 5-week class, 2 sessions a week, and the price of admission is 10 pre-orders of my book.
I love it.
And someone already signed up. I was like, yes.
I love it. So brilliant. You're such a mastermind of this. What has the reception been from reviewers and family members and your readers and your husband? Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. My husband is not reading the book. And God bless him, that's a good choice. His mom probably will. But you know what I've really learned is like, it's not for me to tell people if they want to read my book or not. That's a decision I want them to make for themselves, my mom included. I even talk about it in the epilogue for the book, how like I did want my mom to read an early draft of the book because I think I just wanted her to like see me for my full self. And you know what? She probably will eventually, and it will probably shock her to her core. And so like that's for her to decide in her own time if she wants to do that. I did get a review that I didn't know was coming from Publishers Weekly, and it was so positive. And another thing I've learned, which I'm curious your thoughts, is that you are not in control of how other people read your book. Like they imagine their grandma, they think of their experiences, they put extra shit on your book that's like not even there, and you want that. And still, it's a bizarre kind of experience. So I'm at the beginning of this process of just being like, okay, now it's yours.
Yeah, it's a gift to the world now. And what happens is not in our control. You have to let it fly.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so then this is a little bit of a lightning round. What is one tip for a writer trying to get their book published that you would give at this point?
I think contests are really great. I mean, I did not think that was how I was going to get my book published. And I'm so glad that I did, especially, you know, memoirs are so hard to sell. And these small presses are so passionate about the work that they publish.
Beautiful. I've never thought about that. I'm totally going to do that when my manuscript is ready.
Yeah.
What writing advice do you wish you had had from your future self?
It's okay that it's going to take a long time. I have at many points along the way been frustrated that I wasn't further along or whatever. And then when I look back and I think about what if I would have published the book that I thought I was going to write when I was, 10, 12 years ago, I would be a little bit embarrassed by that book. So like sometimes things taking a long time is a blessing in disguise.
Amen. What have you learned about writers from this podcast of yours that surprised you?
Oh my God, I've learned so much. Hannah Howard told me about 750words.com. She was one of my first interviews. And I love that. I always try to share it with my students. I did a whole episode about 750words.com, but it's so simple. It's like just a plain text interface, and they give you a check mark every day. And so there's something about myself that I'm like internally competitive. It's like a sort of external way for me to keep myself on track. And I'm not strict. It doesn't have to be stuff for the book. Sometimes I write a newsletter thing, or I let myself journal or whatever. But I've been really consistent with it. And it's a great way to just like stay in touch with your writer self.
Brilliant. What's your favorite interview on this podcast?
How
Scandalous.
dare you?
Scandalous.
How dare you? Who's coming to mind right now is Bassie Ickby. I'm Telling the Truth, But I'm Lying is such a good book. But I mean, I can't even limit it to one that's an epic interview. I have also interviewed Matt Bell and Ali Rowbottom and Chloe a couple times and Chelsea Martin. I mean, I feel like every interview that I have done for this show has been, I just interviewed Courtney Mom. Everybody's teaching me something new. And so, yeah, I recommend, they've taught me so much. And so even just going through and picking a few of your favorite folks that you want to check out, you can learn so much from their stories.
I agree. I binged the podcast and I learned something. And I love the interviews with Chloe. And I also learn about writers that I wasn't aware of and their books. And I go look up their books. And it's so incredible. What's your favorite comedy?
You are with the heavy hitting questions. Succession just popped into you know what I love about Succession? It's that guy wrote Peep Show, which is this British kind of odd POV comedy. Peep Show's like a legit comedy. But what I love about what Jesse Armstrong brought to Succession is all of that dark comedy that's underneath, mixed in with the really serious story that he's telling. And God, there's so many lines in that show that are like just fucking brilliant.
That's twisted. You're a pervert. I mean, I love that because like I love Succession. We call it Successions in my family. But like I do not think of it as a comedy at all.
Really?
No, but I love that you do. And it is so dark and it's so brilliant and I love it so much. What do you dream about?
I actually have pretty vivid dreams because my thyroid doctor has me on this drug called low-dose naltrexone. And it really makes you dream like pretty hardcore. I forget them pretty quickly. Sometimes I dream about all kinds of fucked up shit. I cheated on my husband in a recent dream. That was crazy. There was an odd thing about book publishing that happened in a recent dream. So I guess I'm like just working through shit in my life.
What was your favorite or most influential fairy tale growing up?
God, I love fairy tales. Hansel and Gretel.
Okay. Yeah. Hansel and Gretel, right? With the kids that get abandoned.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's very Joan Didion of you. Because Joan Didion often like talks about or writes about the abandonment of a child at any age.
Did they go in the stove or was that somebody else?
Didn't they get left in the woods? They were like, we're going to go on a little ride and we're going to go to grandma's house, and they get like left in the woods and then
someone almost tries to cook them or something. Oh, yeah. They get lured by a witch living in a gingerbread house only to outsmart and defeat her on their way home with her treasure.
It's a very Courtney fairy tale for sure. What are you afraid to write about?
Oh my God. So I feel like I hit a new level with writing in terms of like, I feel like there's not much anymore. Like in my next book, I'm writing about, God, one of the most mortifying things is that I left my dog in a hot car, my beloved dog, because I had a UTI and I was going into Planned Parenthood, and it doesn't matter. She could have died. And I'm just going to write about it. I'm going to write about one of the most horrible things that I have done, because what are we doing if we're not exploring the stuff that scares us? So, I mean, that's kind of my challenge to myself. Of course, I'm like, not trying to hurt people in my life unnecessarily or whatever. So there are there are things that I wouldn't write about, but not because it scares me, more because of care for other people.
Yeah, I gotta say that was a standout sad moment in your book, the part about how your family was about pets and the bunny that died and the froze to death.
Oh, froze to death. Yeah.
That was like really painful for me. I can't handle anything about animals being hurt.
I know.
Like, cannot even deal. Yeah, it was like that was a hard part of your book, actually. So yeah, I would love for you to write more about that. Okay, how can we find Girl Gone Wild and snatch it up immediately?
Okay, thank you so much for doing this. Yeah, I'm going to say order it. I kind of want my numbers to count for BookScan. If you're not a writer, you don't know, but for writers in the house, sadly, you want your numbers to be documented by the corporate overlords. So buy it wherever. Buy it from the bad place. You can buy it from Amazon. Bookshop.org is better. That also logs on BookScan. Barnes and Noble almost seems like a quaint local bookstore at this point.
But what doesn't count for book scanning?
Some independent bookstores, but by all means, request Girl Gone Wild from your local bookstore. That means just as much to me. And anywhere you get it and interact with it would just be so meaningful to me.
Fantastic. And then the last question is, what's next for you?
I'm writing this book. I don't even want to say the title, but it's about should I be a mother? And it's about food issues. And I cannot wait I'm going to try to get it out in the world within 2 years. And then I'm not done with Girls Gone Wild. Shockingly, I have more to say about that. And I'm always thinking about how I could write more things related to Private Parts Unknown. So that's all kind of circling in my head. And I have a late in life humiliation kink, and I am having so much fun doing stand-up again. So,
oh, that's amazing. That's great.
Yeah. Catch me on the stage.
So you're doing stand-up in Austin. We can catch Girl Gone Wild at any bookstore, online, buy it from all the places, interact with it, engage with it. Are you doing some readings and some events?
I'm hopefully going to do one with you and Hannah Sward in LA. That's my dream.
Sure, I'd love to.
I might go to Portland. I might go to New York and Chicago. I've got some things in mind, but I'm not allowing myself to plan until I finish this audiobook. And then I've committed to this confessional class with my students. So my book tour is going to be probably slightly delayed, but I'm very excited to go places in like May, June.
I love it. Bestseller, Girl Gone Wild. What is the confessional class you're teaching? Can people find your classes somewhere?
Yeah, I think the doors will probably be closed by the time this is out, okay. TBD, but you can find my other classes at CourtneyKosak.com/teaching.
And your Instagram and YouTube and all that?
I make it really easy for people, just at Courtney Kosak everywhere on the internet. It's hard not to find me, honestly.
Great. Okay, I love you. This has been incredible.
I love you.
I admire you so much. I love this book so much. I'm not done talking about it, but it has been, over an hour 15, so.
Eternal thanks right back at you. I'm your biggest fan, so love you, and hopefully we get to talk soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much to Antonia, and thank you for joining me for this episode of The Bleeders. Writing is so much better with friends. I'm your host, Courtney Kosak, and hey, let's connect on social media. I am at Courtney Kosak. Last name is Kosak on Instagram and all the other social medias. Make sure you're signed up for the Bleeders Companion Substack for all kinds of newsletter exclusives. I also have a paid subscription where I take you behind the book, behind the byline. I've written about my return to stand-up comedy and how I did it, my MFA and whether or not I think it is worth it, and so much more. There is a link for the newsletter in the episode description. And of course, make sure you order your copy of Girl Gone Wild if you haven't already. I also have links for that in the episode description, as well as links for all of my upcoming classes. And join me again next time for another inspiring episode. In the meantime, happy bleeding.